Well, it's very late in the day, and I'm sure by now the news cycle's already shifted. Nobody cares about the first debate anymore, but you know what? I still want to talk about it, even though I'm very late giving, giving my thoughts on it. Especially since, I think my video from yesterday actually aged pretty well. My pregame analysis of this whole debate was essentially that it doesn't matter, not going to shift votes. It's not going to change people's minds. That's what I said. There was a potential that it could shift vote totals because I thought that it could serve to either increase voter turnout among certain groups. That's what I said that Trump should be trying to do here. I think that I thought Biden, really, the best thing he could have done since he's in the lead is just try and not screw up and just get through things. And try and come out unscathed so that, a draw would be good for Biden. Because Biden is vulnerable, I think, in this kind of a scenario in a debate because, he's not too good at talking these days. And so if he's, in that kind of an environment where he can say something and, sound like an idiot, that could hurt him. Trump, on the other hand, I thought needed to try and energize some of his voters, people who maybe ordinarily would stay home, but might be inclined to vote for someone who's different and out of the box like Trump, because in my opinion, that is why he won in 2016. The margins are so slim in the 3 states which really, turned things in his favor: Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. I think it's not crazy to say that Trump won these states by energizing people who either had never voted or had not voted in a long time, who are not a part of the normal Republican coalition, and are perhaps feel left out by the Democrats these days, and energize them to get off the couch and go vote for him. And so I thought Trump needed to tap into that energy again. I'm not the only person saying this, but it doesn't seem to be a consensus. I do feel like this is a minority position, but I do think that it would be the correct one, politically speaking. But then, of course, the debate finally came. And what happened? Well, Trump didn't do what I thought he would, or what I thought he should do, which does not shock me. I did not expect Trump to do what I think he should do. Trump has never done what really I think he should do, except in a couple cases like, Syria. That's a good example. He told the CIA to stop funding ISIS. I thought that was a great idea, something I thought he should have done day one. He did do it. I think that's the only thing that Trump has ever done that I thought he should have done. Other than that, Trump tends to make decisions that are, strategically speaking, not decisions I would have made. But then again, he's the one who was elected president, not me. So I'm not going to come out and say that just because Trump didn't do what I think he should do means that he made a terrible decision. I don't know. Trump last night came out, and obviously anyone who watched, anyone who's heard anything about what happened, knows that he was very combative, to say the least. He did not let Joe Biden get in a word edgewise, which personally I think was a mistake. I'm not shocked that he did it, but, who knows? Maybe it wasn't a mistake. I'm not going to be so bold as to say that I know for a fact that, oh my gosh, Trump blew it last night. It was terrible. Because it's not like that what Trump did was totally illogical. It's not like there was there were no upsides to what Trump did last night. Because while Trump, because of what he was doing, just shouting over Biden constantly and trying to dominate the conversation, and then, of course, Biden cutting back in, talking over him, and then Wallace constantly interrupting both of them and telling Trump, hey, you got to be quiet, you got to let Joe talk. This prevented Trump from being able to articulate, any kind of a clear message on any issue. I don't think that anyone got really any good answers on anything, neither Trump nor Biden. And so this, to me, means that he failed to do what I thought, he should have done going into this, and that is try and motivate people who, not undecided voters, not people who know they're voting but don't know who, because that's a ridiculous group of people who should not be catered to. Those are dangerous people who, frankly, I think should be ridiculed, not coveted. But that's a topic for another video. The people who I thought Trump should have been trying to speak to were people who don't really think that they're going to vote, but are open to voting for Trump, if he gives them a good reason to. And so he failed to do that. But what did he achieve in trying to dominate the conversation and talk over Biden? Well, he prevented Biden from having any good moments last night. Biden was unable to prove that he is a well put together and well thought out person. A lot of people, recognize that Joe Biden seems to have been, experiencing a bit of cognitive decline over the last couple of years. And there are a lot of people who he could have reassured last night if he was able to perform and to give a series of articulate and well thought out answers. Last night was Biden's opportunity to look well put together and buttoned up and professional and mature, and contrast himself with the childish Donald Trump that the suburbanites hate so much. And ironically, through all of his outbursts and things, Trump prevented Biden from doing that. And in a couple instances, Trump even goaded Biden into getting down in the mud with him. And as we learned in 2016, when you try and get down in the gutter with Trump, it doesn't go well for you. I think a lot of people remember Marco Rubio's infamous small hands joke that he tried to make about Trump. And it made little Marco really look like a tiny, tiny man. Because, that's not his shtick. Marco Rubio's whole thing was, that he's the professional buttoned up, he's the next Jack Kennedy. There's always these politicians every couple of years who audition to be the next Jack Kennedy. This, slick, fast-talking politician who has all the right answers to everything and makes you feel warm inside and proud to be an American. And when Jack Kennedy comes out and says, my opponent, you see, he has these very small hands, and we all know what that means. That means that my opponent has a small... Well, I can't say this on TV. I'm sorry, I'm not good at doing a Jack Kennedy voice. I've never tried. But you get my point. It's not something Jack Kennedy would say. That's not something that Barack Obama would say, to use a more recent example. Barack Obama is a Jack Kennedy kind of candidate. Now, Trump clearly was trying to goad Biden into doing this. He wanted Biden to have a kind of moment like Marco Rubio had back then. And I have to say, Joe Biden was obviously going to be prepared for this, because I think almost everyone knew that Trump was going to try and do this, to try and be very aggressive, to goad Biden into having, some kind of outburst. Because, Joe Biden he's been known to have a temper in the past, at least in his younger years. He could get very, things could get heated for him on the debate stage. When people have asked him tough questions, individual voters. Like, remember that one union guy who said, hey, Joe, don't you want to take away all my guns? And he said, hey, listen here, fat. He almost called him a meaner name than just fat. Trump wanted to provoke those kinds of responses from Biden, and Biden mostly resisted. But from what I've been hearing, like, for example, the Frank Luntz focus group, which I'm not a big fan of Frank Luntz's focus groups, but they do have some value. Because they are individual people who are not me, so they are just, they are a very small sample size, but it's interesting to hear the results of, real people who are watching these things. And it would seem as though, a lot of people, I can't say how much, what percentage, because the data is just not good enough on this sort of thing. We're never going to have detailed enough data to really understand, how everyone thinks about what happened last night. But I think the general consensus is that both candidates did not look good, that they both looked like they were engaging in similar things, and that Biden failed to stand above Trump. He looked like he was down there, in the trenches, fighting against him, rather than, rising above like some, I don't know, messiah. And so I don't think that Biden got the kind of contrast that he would have wanted coming out of last night. Last night, I think Biden would have wanted people to feel comfortable with him. They would have wanted to feel proud of him. They would have wanted the campaign, Biden, they would have wanted to make people feel proud to be an American. Again, kind of like the Jack Kennedy thing. But Biden is very much trying to run to be not the partisan guy. He's trying to be the return to normalcy. He's saying, hey, I'm Mr. Americana. That's when you vote for me, you're voting for the good old, US of A, the one that we remember from 4 years ago. And while someone like me, who is, steeped in the history of the 20th century in the United States and other places, doesn't see things as so rosy. People who don't like Trump very much are nostalgic for the time before Trump. And so when they look at Joe Biden, they're looking for a kind of politics that existed in the pre-Trump age. But when Biden, is on the same stage with Donald Trump, it's kind of inevitable that he becomes mired in the trappings of the Trump era. And this happened to just about everyone who debated Donald Trump. These people, they were destroyed. Their credibility, they were not taken seriously anymore. Look at Chris Christie, Marco Rubio, Jeb Bush, Ted Cruz. These are all people who were, considered to be serious, to varying degrees, serious candidates for the presidency. These were men who took themselves very seriously. Their supporters took them seriously. But after seeing them on stage with Trump, nobody takes any of them seriously. And, what we saw last night, I think, was the beginnings of the same thing happening to Joe Biden. Now, of course, it's very late in the race for this to happen. But I think that a lot of people were disappointed last night. Biden supporters in particular, and I don't mean just the progressives, and I can get to that, oh my gosh. Biden tried very hard last night to distance himself from the left and to make it clear that he's not a left-winger. He denounced the Green New Deal, denounced socialized medicine, pretty much everything that your Democratic activist base would want. Joe Biden said, no, I'm totally against these things. But putting the activist base aside, the hashtag resist crowd, the folks who hate Trump, and that's their whole political identity. Vapid people like Alyssa Milano, who are just total shills with no sort of ideological framework or set of ideas. That crowd, I think, were the kinds of people who were looking for Biden to be this sterling, man of integrity, and that simply wasn't there last night. And so I make all of this to say that even though Trump did not take my advice, nor did I expect him to take my advice, there is some utility in what he did last night. It should not be viewed as a total, as just a absurdity, like most people are. And it's very easy, I think, to look at it in this way. It's very easy to look at almost everything that Trump does and just say that, this is him just being a crazy person. So in closing, I do think that I was right yesterday, and that I said that this debate was not going to change any minds. You're not going to have people who watched this debate and were, undecideds and thought, gee, I'm going to carefully examine the responses of both candidates and judge, who I think makes the best case. Yeah, that didn't happen yesterday. Nobody was. I'm someone who follows this stuff very closely, and I could not follow the answers of Trump or Biden because there was just so much shouting going back and forth that neither of them were able to articulate any points. They did not have the opportunity to do that. And so they convinced no new voters. Now, they also, like I said, I don't think energized their bases. Trump, I think, failed to make good cases to energize his base. Or to, get people who, are would-be Trump voters off the couch. And Biden seemed to be running away from his base as fast as he could, which, may hurt him. It may not. I'm not entirely sure. I mean, I tend to think that these sorts of progressive activists who care about the issues that Joe Biden was running away from live in these, these coastal, densely populated blue cities like New York and LA. Which, of course, New York and California, Biden is going to win handily anyway. So he can kind of afford to, or at least I can understand him making the calculus that he can just totally piss on the progressives and not worry about facing the consequences. And of course, if you want to then look at, well, maybe Biden's base then is the return to normalcy crowd. He also failed to energize them because he got down, he got mud on him by going in there and trying to do battle with Trump. Trump, gets people dirty, and that happened last night. So both candidates failed to energize their base. But the effect that I do think that this debate did end up having, so I do think this debate will have some effect, is to discourage people from voting. I think that this will suppress turnout, which is a good thing. I'm very happy to have less people voting. I think people need to realize that voting is not going to save you. Voting is not a way to affect change in America or almost any other country. I believe it was Emma Goldman who said, if voting really mattered, they wouldn't let you do it. And I think it's good that people are coming to the realization that, the nominees of the two major political parties are not going to be, ever these paragons of virtue who just, are the embodiment of everything, good and holy. And America pretty much has, the lowest voter turnout by far of any of the Western democratic countries, in the world. So, I think the American people are already much more red-pilled on this sort of idea than Europeans or the Anglosphere. But I think last night's debate had the effect to teach that to more people. Even though the ratings were down like 65% from the first debate of 2016, still a lot of people watched that debate last night, and a lot of people, I think, came away with the conclusion that, our politics are not, they're not going back to normal, no matter who you vote for. So I think I'll end it here. With that said, if you've gained anything of value out of this video, I'd appreciate you clicking that like button and sharing this video. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe because I do upload every day, and I'd hate to have you miss one. So I'll see you folks back here tomorrow.